There is a lot to discover in this video. A Rolex for Indiana Jones, a Rolex for Marylin Monroe, and a watch highly inspired by a Jules Verne story. Welcome to Caseback Watches. My name is Tim and let's begin here with Indiana Jones. Some weeks ago I showed you a Hamilton Boulton Quartz American Classic in Watch of the Week, this video series every Monday here. And I think we all weren't a bit disappointed and not really satisfied because it was a good looking tank, good looking piece, but it was a quartz. And everybody, nearly everybody, me included, said, well, this is not so great. This watch for Indiana Jones with a quartz moving on. No, please not. And then a viewer wrote something interesting in the comments. He said, I've read this article, and in this article, Steven Spielberg, I think it was Steven Spielberg, said that Indiana Jones is type of a Rolex person. So he had opted for a Rolex watch and not for that Hamilton watch there. And then I thought, okay, this makes some sense if you think of other adventurers with their older Rolex Explorers, makes total sense. And so why not create a watch for Indiana Jones, a Rolex for Indiana Jones? But how? Answer with the AI. In my last video, link over there in case you have missed it, I created some watches with the help of the AI, but we have to see the AI did most of the work. I did a bit of prompting for several characters. And then I asked you if you want to see part 2 and with which celebrity in it. And some people said Marylin Monroe. And I said, all right, let's put it all together now. Let's create a Rolex for Indiana Jones. Let's create a Rolex for Marylin Monroe. And let's do it another time with the AI so that we can see what the thing has learned in 2 weeks. Alright, let's begin with Indiana Jones. You see him in 4 images because Midjourney always starts with 4 images, and then you can just enlarge one of them, you can just pick one of them, or you can make iterations from another one. And this is not very specific, so when you just say Indiana Jones with watch, then the thing does something like that, so that you have very randomly chosen designs on the wrist. You have to be more specific, and so as said, I've opted for a certain brand, and this is Rolex, and this is the first result here. And at first glance, this makes way more sense. We see a Rolex bubble back with a characteristic small case, characteristic crown. And at first glance, we see that the textures are amazing and well chosen. They just fit. For example, see this dried out leather strap, all the scratches on the bezel, on the lugs. Also the features of the watch, so massive lume and this grainy black dial. It looks just credible that Indiana Jones had opted for such a piece, at least with these features. But when we look closely now, then we see that the AI doesn't really know what a watch is, what the functionality should be. We could start with a minute scale. There you see the 60 on top. This is correct. But then some numbers are blurrish, and this is because the AI is highly inspired or fed by images on the web. And a lot of watch images are a bit blurry because these elements are tiny. And so the AI sees thousands and millions of watch images and thinks, oh, it's normal. We have some leeway here with the numbers. We can make them blurry because this occurs also in nature. And so this is completely normal. I can put there this, I don't know what it is, this little S there on position 6 in the minute scale, and this must be real. Also very interesting are the hands, cathedral hands for a maximum of lume. This makes some sense. You see some flaws, for example, with the minute hand. This is not correct. This is a bit weird, the tip of the minute hand. The other hands are relatively correct. Interesting now is this element, this window there. Looks a bit like a window for the day, but of course weird placed, and there's some writing in it, Garmix. I don't know what it means, to be honest. So very creative was the thing. With the indices and numerals, we see a mixture of Roman numerals and 2 types of indices, not very precise in dimension. And on position 12, we find the Roman 7. This is of course weird, and it proves again that the thing doesn't know what's doing there. But the 3, 6 and 9 are correct. So overall, I must say, very convincing look. If you see the character of the watch, the type of the watch, this makes total sense. And so I'm very satisfied, but I cannot wait to show you the second watch, because also very interesting, also bubbleback Rolex, crown relatively correct, highly polished, with these marks on the bezel you find on older Rolex. In fact, they are very randomly distributed here. So again, the problem that the AI has seen thousands of images of old watches, and these images were small and blurry. And so yeah, I think now there is some leeway to place these marks. Also note these deep indentations over the crown, which I don't know where this comes from, to be honest. So this doesn't look very realistic, but the case itself, the crystals, see the reflections there, they just marvelous. This all fits. The leather strap, note that the thing has drilled lug holes, also a very nice fit. And when we see the dial now, big surprise, the numerals are correct, because the AI has chosen here a certain model of watch, a military dial, so to speak. And on the internet now you find plenty of images of these dials clearly visible, and so this is the first watch we see without mistakes. 12, 1, 2, 3 and so forth, everything correct there. Also, the Rolex looks relatively correct because the thing could see the Rolex clearly on images. But all the other element of writing, the Swiss made, is completely whacked because the AI couldn't see it properly. Also, the minute track. The hands make sense here in this setup, I think. And so overall, absolutely credible. If this watch showed up in an Indiana Jones movie, I think we all would see it as credible. Note, by the way, this damage on the dial, I just love it. I just love that these damages here. And so I think when you see this watch in the movie only 2 or 3 seconds, then you would think, wow, this is a very interesting Rolex, and it absolutely fits the style of the character and the taste of the character. So AI, in this case, well done. And now let's go to Our Lady. Again, when you just command Marylin Monroe with watch, then you get something very randomly constructed. Again, we see ridiculous case forms, and so this doesn't work. But when you are more specific with your prompts, then you can get something like that. This is the first watch from Marylin Monroe, and we have here a small Rolex with some interesting features. The bracelet looks a bit more like Tudor to me, but I'm not the ladies Rolex expert, to be honest. Maybe there are some Rolex with this type of bracelet. But then you have this iced out bezel, makes totally sense. Absolutely, you see this. What I find very interesting here are these iced out indices. I don't know if this is really present in reality, to be honest, these iced out indices. And then you see the loop, which is correct, and under the loop something weird, and all the other details are also very weird. For example, we have 2 crowns. This is very strange to create. Again, we have this problem that the AI couldn't read properly the wording on the dial, so we have a bit of a mess there. But the, let's say the color spectrum is there, and it's very Marylin Monroe-esque, I think. This deep red together with the diamonds and this bright reflection there on position 11. This is just well done. I don't know, to be honest, if these crown guards are realistic for a ladies Rolex, but again, I'm not the super ladies Rolex expert here. But now let's go to the next one. And here we see a Rolex in full gold, golden dial, golden bracelet, iced out bezel, iced out lugs, interestingly. Look at that. And very interesting, of course, is this element under the 6, which also is iced out. A bit of a random shape, but I pretty much like that. I don't know if this is present in reality. Let me know in the comments if you know this. But overall, very interesting watch. Correct numerals, 12, 3, 6, and 9. There are some problems with the hands, again, because the thing doesn't know that a watch has 3 hands, so it's just mixing together watch images, and often you cannot see the hands very good on these images, and so we end up with this mess. But I must say, it's not a super bad result, and I'm a bit under the impression that this creation here was quicker than the last time. So is it possible that the thing has learned to make better watches in 2 weeks? I think the answer here must be yes. And so I think we all can be very excited when we think about the future, or extremely afraid or in panic, or yeah, there's a lot to choose from. Welcome back, and now let's continue with the next watch. Here comes from Singapore, Horizon Watches, micro brand from Singapore, run by Fred Baker. I hope I don't butcher your name. He's from Ukraine, and he's a watch designer, works for other micro brands and has created his own brand, Horizon Watches, and now he is presenting the Pilgrim. This is a super compressor watch. Super compressor is basically a very simple system, but very effective, where water pressure seals the watch. So if you have a big amount of pressure, let's say on the caseback, then the caseback is super tight because the sealing is squeezed together. And often these super compressors, excuse me, back in the 60s came with two crowns, but this is not connected to the real function as a super compressor. It's another design feature, another piece of equipment there. And now briefly to the story behind it. And it is an adventure that follows the voyage of Pilgrim, a whaler across the Pacific. And the protagonist here is a 15-year-old crew who is tasked to be the captain of the ship when disaster strikes. Great story, really reminds me of those Saturdays in front of the television in the 90s. But let's not imagine here forgotten times. Let's go in the lightbox, let's check out that watch. And there we are with Horizon Pilgrim, and we see pretty dominant big watch with a lot of aspects to discover here. And so let's begin here with the basic dimensions. The case diameter is 41 millimeters, length lug to lug 47, and the height is 12.4 millimeters. Lug width is 22. The watch is waterproof up to 200 meters, has a sapphire crystal, 2 screw-down crowns, and is powered by the Sellita SW200A, so Swiss-made movement. It comes on this rubber strap here, We have a sapphire crystal here with an anti-reflective coating, which you see at work right now. Pretty impressive. This is really something well made. And now let's begin with the key features here. At first glance you see super compressor. It looks like a super compressor from the 60s. As mentioned, these watches where water pressure enhances the water resistance. And they often came with an internal bezel, and you could operate that bezel with that crown here, and the other crown was for the watch itself, and this layout you find here too. Then we have a lot of elements on the dial which are pretty unique. You see these massive lume dots, and speaking of lume, there you have your lume directly from the abyss of the ocean, directly from hell. And you may notice that the font of these numbers are very 60s as well. They're a bit of a 3D form. When you see a building in a perspective, in a shortening perspective, then you have this impression here. Then you have a grainy texture on the inner dial. See that? Grainy texture. This coating here is very good, really, very good. And then you have this outer ring, outer ridge there. This is with a sort of a sunburst effect. And so a lot to discover there. The hands are also pretty dominant, pretty bold, also with a lot of lume. And now let's go to the case. Also not the standard from the rack case. There you have the case back with an engraving. There is a whale and a whale hunter behind it, I think. So we have a clear reference to the adventurous days of our planet. And there, of course, you have the green strap. The case, by the way, has brushed sides, high polished bezel, but the top of the bezel is also brushed, very nice. Finishing quality is okay, absolutely there. And so now let's operate it. And I've found, unfortunately, a little flaw there. First, this is here for the bezel. Works in both directions. You can feel soft clicks, so it's not entirely free floating. And so you can definitely align it to a certain time. This works perfectly fine, Functionality, we can close it again. And now the second crown is for the watch itself. There you go, provides hand winding. Typical Sellita feeling here. Position 1 is now for the date, but first let's use position 2 to move the hands out of the way. Hackable movement, as you can see. And with that position now you can cycle through the date. And here I noticed that some of the numbers are misaligned. See this? Now This is too deep. This is misaligned, that thing. And often you see this when the date wheel is not really centered perfectly, so that every number is a bit above the frame or under the frame, so that you always see, there's something weird. But here you have the problem that some of these numbers are okay, and then it's getting bad. Now it's getting better, and this means that the wheel is not printed 100%. Now these numbers are nearly okay, and then it's getting worse. So this means, imagine that wheel and something went wrong with the printing job a tiny bit. And I think this is because they opted for their special font on the date wheel, which is a really good decision. I think this is really the last mile. But unfortunately, I think they have a little bit of a quality issue. So Horizon, when you see this, I would fix that. It will drive people mad when they see something like this. Or I'm too picky. Let me know in the comments, please. So this is my little minus here. All the other functions are totally there. No problem at all. You can close this in a very proper way. And so absolutely no problem, but this is a bit of a downside. And there you have it on my 17 centimeter wrist. For me, it's a smidgen too big, I personally think. But this is not the Tim show, this is for every watch lover, and so there are many guys out there with bigger wrists and they can enjoy this, but you see that's a dominant, clear statement on the wrist really. What I find though is that the rubber strap is a bit too thick. Look at this. I don't think this is necessary, to be honest. We have seen so many rubber straps that do the job, but they're a bit more, a bit thinner. Especially here when it comes to the clasp, then you have some bulk of rubber on your wrist. I don't know if this is necessary, to be honest. And so I would change the rubber strap. And I also can imagine the watch very good on a mesh bracelet. Not on a NATO because it's too high for that. But with a mesh bracelet, I think it works absolutely fine. And this watch you can pre-order right now for 830 US dollars. These are roughly 800 euros, but you have to, of course, to add 19 or 20% VAT. All right, and now let's carry on. I have the pleasure to present you again viewers' images sent in by you to casebackwatches@icloud.com. Every time you make an image of something interesting, like a watch, interesting site, or both together, you can send it to casebackwatches@icloud.com, and I will include it here into the program. And this watch here comes from Martin from the US. Familiar name. How are things in Hamburg? Well, pretty hot and pretty wet. It's a bit like a tropical island here. And Martin writes, what we have here is a basic two-hand GLC Reverso Classic with a caliber 846 mechanical hand-wound movement. In case somebody is interested about what a small rectangular watch looks like on a medium-sized wrist, here you go. I have a 7¼ inch wrist, and the Reverso's dimensions are 23 to 38.5 millimeters. Now, to the building in the background. This is the Potter Schoolhouse in Bodega, California. It was featured prominently in Alfred Hitchcock's 1963 movie The Birds. In the movie, Tippi Hedren and the students fled from the schoolhouse while being attacked by large numbers of birds. The majority of the movie was shot in Bodega Bay, which is about 5 miles further to the east of Bodega. Very interesting. I mean, the watch proves absolutely that you can wear it when you are against this concept that a watch has to cover your entire wrist all the time. It's not true. If you decide, no, I want a more classic look and I want this as an subtle, elegant accessory, then this goes, as Martin here absolutely proves. And that the house is still standing is interesting. I thought this was kind of a prop or long gone. I mean, this movie really was from this, 63, and it's still there. But I can imagine that is really a tourist magnet. And so overall, very interesting email, Martin. Thank you very much for sending this in. And now we're at the end of this video. Thank you very much for your attention, and until next Friday.